John Bolton, who served as the National Security Affairs during a previous Trump administration, spoke exclusively to WION on a range of issues, including the creation of Doge, dismantling of USAID, and on the Ukraine peace plan. Here's what he had to say on this. Listen in.
Trump and his defense secretary yesterday laid out a series of positions that contradict positions that the U.S. And its NATO allies have held for a long time. Most importantly, the objective that NATO has had now, ever since Russia's unprovoked aggression in February of 2022, is the full restoration of Ukraine's territory and territorial integrity and sovereignty. And that objective is now gone. And not only was it given away, it was given away before any negotiation. And as far as we know on the public record, without any concessions or reciprocity by Putin and the Russians. Second, the prospect of NATO membership is now off the table, which has been a fundamental Russian demand, even though it was President George W. Bush who convinced NATO in 2008 to make it clear that NATO membership was in prospect for Ukraine. And really, it's the whole manner of giving in to some of these fundamental Russian points, notwithstanding their huge defeats on the battlefield in Ukraine, affects the negotiations before they ever begin. And so it puts Russia in a very, very good bargaining position. This is what Putin had been playing for by releasing long-held American hostage Mark Fogel, by having Belarus release just 2 days ago another long-held American, and by Putin's campaign of flattery with Trump. You can commit unprovoked aggression against a country and then come away with the fruits of that aggression is an incentive to further aggression. It allows Putin to be able to say to all the other republics formerly part of the Soviet Union that the whole basis of the dissolution of the Soviet Union, the so-called Belavesia Accords, where each republic became independent along the lines of their republic boundaries inside the Soviet Union, that those don't mean anything anymore. You know, Putin said back in 2005, the breakup of the Soviet Union was the greatest geopolitical catastrophe of the 20th century. And his objective for quite some time thereafter has clearly been to reestablish the Russian Empire. And I think when you allow the Russians to gain territory from Ukraine by the use of military force, you're telling every other newly independent state that they are vulnerable, and that the U.S. and NATO, where that's applicable, are not really going to stand in their way. That's a terrible lesson for the Kremlin to see. Well, I'm very worried about what's happening to the U.S. Agency for International Development. I'm an alumnus of AID from the Reagan administration. It certainly has its flaws. I have no doubt money is wasted, and I have no doubt you could have substantial review of the programs and cut a lot of waste and do a lot of reform. But to risk dismantling the instrument itself, to say, in effect, it's incapable of being reformed, to leave the U.S. without a bilateral foreign aid program, I think is a big mistake. And that's apparently exactly what's going on. There's a complex system of ethics requirements that you're supposed to go through when you become a federal government employee, and to avoid being able to enrich yourself while you're on the federal payroll. It's not at all clear what ethics checks Musk has undergone or what constraints he's operating under. They boast that Doge is a very transparent agency, but there are many things we don't know. And what I find hard to understand is why Trump isn't worried about that himself, because ultimately, if Musk runs into trouble, and it looks like he may be starting to, the negative politics could rebound against Trump himself, which you would think he would take more care in trying to avoid. I think it was reckless and vindictive. The particular threats that several others of us faced, Pompeo, Mark Esper, Mark Milley, myself, are from Iran, and the threats are very serious. The threat level is real. This is not, chatter on the internet. This has been verified, and actually, in my case, the subject of criminal charges filed against an Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps officer who was trying to hire a hitman some years ago. So, and Trump himself obviously is at the top of the Iranian list, and he has been the subject of Iranian assassination efforts. So he's certainly perfectly entitled to and should have full Secret Service protection. But it's harmful to our government, I think, to leave other people uncovered when they face such threats, because it's an incentive to rogue states like Iran to engage in this kind of terrorism. Trump's decision to withdraw protection was politically motivated. And I think, look, when President Biden reauthorized my Secret Service protection, I'm sure he wasn't happy about the things that I was saying about his foreign policy. But he saw the risk to the United States, not just to me, but to the country, to its policymakers, to future policymakers. And he made the right decision to extend protection. So I think if I were serving in the Trump administration today and I saw what Trump had done, I'd be very worried about what would happen if in the future I disagreed with Trump on something, but I was in a vulnerable position because of the service I'd given during his own administration. I think it's juvenile. I think it's unbecoming of a president, and but that's the way Trump is. It's one reason I think that he's not an effective president, and why he shouldn't have been reelected. But he is, and we have to deal with it. Two have a very good personal relationship, and that's a positive. I hope they talk about the big geopolitical issue, the in the Indo-Pacific, which is the threat from China. I'd like to see closer bilateral cooperation between India and the United States. I think there's room for multilateral cooperation with Japan and Australia through the Quad, which was an excellent idea, and which made some progress during the Biden administration. They will undoubtedly talk about tariffs. That's appropriate whenever you have two big countries with extensive trading relations, and they're always difficult issues because the economies, businesses of the two countries are involved. But I hope that the trade questions don't dominate and to the exclusion of the other bigger strategic issues. Well, I don't know what the reason for it is. It's uncalled for, but uh, Trump likes dealing with Vladimir Putin and Xi Jinping. I think that's dangerous for the country because he doesn't understand the stakes of some of the issues he's talking about or the importance of some of the concessions that he's making. But that's something that's going to come up every time he has a conversation with Vladimir Putin or other leaders like that.